President of InterDyn BMI, to teach us more about year-end practices. Take it away, Brian.
All right, thanks, Kim. So let me catch up to where you left off here. And I think we're ready. Okay, so hello everyone. What we're going to talk about for the next 45-50 minutes is the year-end update for the supported versions of Dynamics GP that are out there, and kind of what's included when you need it, when you might not need it, and some of the changes that are featured in the year-end update. And then we're also going to talk about some of the GP 2016 R2 features and when that's going to release, and then kind of close out with several links to important documents that are around the year-end process that the software is available for, and just other helpful things that might be outside of Dynamics GP altogether. So so to get started, you see here the 2013 update has already been released. So if you're on GP 2013 or 13R2, that's available. 2015, including 2015 R2, is also available. GP 2016, we're expecting that in about a week, so somewhere around December 1st. One thing to note there with, you can see the asterisk, is when you apply the 2016 year-end update, you will get 2016 R2 at the same time. And the reason Microsoft did that is not to force you into R2, but so you only have to do one update, because what they didn't want people to do was get the year-end update and have to go through that process and then on virtually the same day release 2016 R2 and make you do two kind of steps to get to GP 2016 R2. And so that's all going to be bundled in one, which will save you a lot of time if you're on 2016. And you'll notice I skipped the first line there. If you're on GP 2010 or anything prior to that, there are no more year-end updates. And so it's time to upgrade. If you're running payroll or doing 1099 reporting out of GP, or tracking fixed assets for tax purposes, you really have to strongly consider upgrading pretty darn quick, because your system for 2010 users and before, earlier versions, your system is not going to be compatible or comply with the form changes and ACA changes and so forth. And so hopefully nobody that's running payroll or doing 1099s is still running GP 2010 or earlier, but if so, we should talk a little bit more about that offline. Okay. So some people say, you know, well, how do I know what version I'm running? And that's a good question. There's two very simple ways to check. When you log into Dynamics GP, so you see the screen on the left, I'm about to log in as the SA user. You'll notice the blue banner there says Microsoft Dynamics GP 2016, so that's a pretty good hint to pick up your version. But if you need to know the exact version number, which is kind of the development version number, you can gather that by the lower left-hand corner there, and you'll see this is version 16.00.0404. And so that would tell us exactly which service pack level you're on, if you're on one of the R2 releases, and so that would show us exactly where you stand today. But most people, it's okay to just notice the blue banner that says GP 2016. That's an easy way to figure out where you're at if for some reason you don't know. The other way is if you've already logged into Dynamics GP, if you go up under the help, which is the little blue question mark up in the upper right-hand corner, it's generally going to be right below the X to actually close the software window. And so if you click on the question mark, you'll get the screen that opens right below it. So you'll get the information screen. And on the right-hand side at the very top, you'll see also the exact version number that you're running. And of course in the blue banner, just like the login screen, you'll see that this is in fact GP 2016. And so those are two pretty easy ways that, you know, if you're not 100% positive of what you have, that's two easy ways to tell you. Okay, so just kind of some general notes about the year-end updates and kind of how the process works. All the updates are cumulative. That means if you were to put the year-end update service pack on, that's inclusive of all prior service packs for your version. So, you know, if there were 4 or 5 service packs released since you actually went to GP 2013, for example, if you grab the year-end update, that's going to include all of those prior patches, service packs, hot fixes, all prior year-end updates. So that's good because you only have to do it once. You don't have to step through all those things that you might have missed because not every customer puts every service pack or every update on, and that there's nothing typically wrong with that. But the year-end updates will always get you completely caught up for your version. And so if you've gone through the process before, I think you all realize that you put the update on at the server and it kind of chunks through the process and actually does what it's going to do to the database, so to your system. And then it has to be applied to every workstation where GP is running. And of course you have to do that typically after hours, but you have to do that when no users are logged in. And so sometimes people ask, well, how long does it take? Well, that's harder to answer. It depends on how many companies you have, how many workstations you have that run GP, the size of the databases, so the size of your companies, and the speed of your hardware, and so forth. But, you know, if you have a very small system, it can be done in a couple hours. If you have a very large system, sometimes it takes a weekend to get all of those things done and making sure that everybody's ready for Monday morning business type thing. And of course, it's always a good idea to test. Not everybody does that. If you've gone through dozens of upgrades and service packs and year-end updates in the past and you haven't made too many changes to your system, sometimes people will forego that step. But from our you know, viewpoint, is good consulting recommendation is we always recommend that you test it, is to make sure that everything is okay and there aren't any surprises, and so that's always a benefit to do. And of course that takes a little bit of extra time and extra planning. It might take an extra weekend, so to speak, to do the test and then do your live system at maybe the next weekend and so forth. But it is, you know, for larger systems, that's always a little bit of insurance and peace of mind that is generally well worth it. So the other thing that we always like to call out is if you have customization. So if we've done customization for you, or if you've done your own, or you've had another partner over the years do custom code and apply to your system, we really need to chat through that before we say just go ahead and do the year-end update, because there are changes to the database and there are changes to the actual software. And so what we typically like to do is, you know, if it's our code, we like to make sure that we've tested it kind of in-house, and that we would kind of say, yes, we'll give you the green light to put the year-end update on, or even if our team does it, we want to make sure our development staff has a chance to take a look at the code and make sure that something in that code's not going to break during the year-end update process. And so, and again, kind of like testing, that's always a positive thing. We don't want to find those things out in a live environment and then, you know, we're shut down for a day or two while we figure out what happened and try to get it fixed. And so it's much better to be proactive. And so really here we just ask that if you have custom code in place, that you contact either support at InterDynBMI.com or Lori Ritzer at InterDynBMI.com. Lori kind of can traffic cop all of the requests that come in, and it could be we've already tested your code and we know that it's okay, and so we just get you that information. But if we haven't, then that's something we'll probably suggest that needs to be done before we just give you the green light there. So do I need the year-end update? And this is probably the #1 question that we hear every year this time is, do I need to apply this? And so it's pretty simple to figure out. If you're using GP, any of the versions that are supported, so 13, 15, 16, if you're using GP human resource functionality to track the Affordable Care Act, and then probably you're producing the 1095-C forms, then yes, you definitely need the update this year. If you're printing 1099s for your vendors where you're issuing those to subcontract or people that are not your employees for work that's been done, then you do need the update. There are changes in some of those forms. And the last one is a little bit less popular, but if you're doing tax depreciation in the fixed asset module in Dynamics GP and you have autos on the books, you probably know that luxury auto provision changes every year and how much depreciation you can take on your Mercedes or your Bentley. And so Microsoft has to include the tax law changes into the fixed asset system. And so if you do have luxury autos on the books in our fixed asset module or in Microsoft's fixed asset module, then yes, you do need the year-end update so that you stay in compliance with those IRS rules. Now, if you're not doing tax depreciation in the fixed asset system, if you're just using it to record your kind of general ledger depreciation, what we call your accounting depreciation, GAAP depreciation, and you're not trying to figure out what the tax numbers should be if someone else does that or your CPA does it, then the update won't matter in that area because obviously the IRS is not fooling with accounting rules, only tax rules, and so that's one distinction really to make there. Okay, so when is it really optional to put the update on? So, and it's always a good idea to apply the updates, just you're getting things that Microsoft has done to the system, and assuming that you're on maintenance on an annual enhancement plan, you're paying for these things, and it's always nice to have the features that they're putting into these service packs. And so, but sometimes the timing just isn't right, and so there are times that the year-end update is completely optional, and it's kind of the opposite of the previous slide. So if you're not doing 1099 reporting from your GP system, if you're not doing Affordable Care Act tracking and producing your 1095-C documents from the system, then you don't need the update. And we have a note there that if you're using a companion product to produce 1095, so sometimes people think of, well, I'm tracking it here, but if someone else is producing the form, like you know, Green Shades or some third party, or you might even have ADP or your payroll processing organization producing those documents, so that's fine, and you would still fall under the year-end update is optional then for you. Or if you're using Canadian payroll, and so, and there's a note there that if you happen to be one of the few Canadian payroll customers that we support, they have their own update, as you probably well know, and we're looking for that to be released around the middle of next month. And the Canadian payroll update will also include the U.S. changes. So, and again, they could have separated those because they are different, but they didn't want you to have to put two updates on. So if you want some of the features, and you might actually have U.S. payroll as well as Canadian payroll, so we have a few of those, they didn't want you to have to go through the process more than one time. And so if you are a Canadian payroll customer and you're on this presentation, then just hold off until that Canadian update comes out around the middle of December, and then you'll get the year-end update for the U.S. changes to go along with your Canadian changes. So what's all included this year in the 2016 year-end update? Well, good news is there's no changes at all to the W-2 or to the W-3, and so nothing, really nothing at all there. If you're electronic filing your W-2s, there are no changes to that process. there is a change to the due date, and so those are now going to be due at the end of January, and so you don't have these March into March type due dates for electronic filing anymore without an extension. They've backed those due dates up to January 31st on a lot of these filing reports. And the reason is to try to get that information into either the IRS or Social Security Administration sooner, and so that they can get those into their system electronically and get that information, if it's W-2s, get that information shared from the Social Security system over to the IRS system as tax returns start coming in to try to cut down on fraud. And so as you well would expect, that's there's a certain part of abuse in tax filing, and so that's really what the due date tightening up really is designed for. There are some ACA updates included with the year-end update. Again, as that law changes, Microsoft takes responsibility for making those changes in the system for you. They always tweak, I'll call it, the executable, so the Dynamics EXE and the Dynamics dictionary where the actual program code is stored. Most service packs, they do some adjusting of that, and of course the dictionary file has the program code in it, but a lot of times they will adjust the executable just to kind of tweak it for performance and things that they've learned based on customer feedback and support cases. And so that's a good reason to try to get these updates on, even though you might say, well, I don't do payroll or 1099 reporting out of the system, so I don't need it. Technically true, but you're missing some things if you do choose to kind of overlook some of these, and so that's one good reason to maybe try to schedule to have the service packs put on when they come out, just so you get the little enhancements that Microsoft's adding to the software. 1099 miscellaneous form changes, that's really the thing there is the due date. Again, that's going to be due January 31st. If and only if you have non-employee compensation, which is box 7, filled out. And that's probably 99% or more of what most all of you use the 1099 for is the box 7. And so that's kind of the subcontractor, the non-employee compensation that's being paid. So if you have an entry in box 7, that changes your due date to January 31st. If you don't use box 7, so you're using a 1099 for attorney payments or rents or royalties or something other than non-employee compensation, then your due dates really have not changed. And so they're just trying to get that subcontract piece in there, because that's the bulk of what those forms actually are used for every year. So 1099 interest does have form changes, and then of course because the 1099, when there's one change on one 1099, that changes the 1096, which is a transmittal form that we use to send these things in, and so that caused the 1096 to change, and then the fixed asset depreciation on the luxury automobiles changes every year, and so that's of course included in the year-end update. Okay, so a couple of things real quick. Here's the 1099 interest. Big change here is they labeled box 12. Box 12 was there last year, but it didn't have a label, and so everybody just ignored it. Well, they finally decided they were going to label it and use it for something. Bond premium on Treasury obligations probably is not going to affect a whole lot of people out there, and so 1099 interest is, for the most part, no significant updates there. The 1096 again changed because of that 1099 interest change. They did rearrange some of the boxes, so which always kind of keeps us on our toes here. And really they made the boxes that are kind of highlighted there where you check off which forms are attached, that whole 2-row area on the 1096, they shrunk that down to fit some of these other things that you can see off to the right there, the 1099K and the 5498 QA. They had to add those, and so they had to resize the bottom part of the form. So those boxes are smaller this year than they have been. So that's a good reason to be able to justify the year-end update if you're looking for one. Is if you print these, you don't really want to go without the year-end update. Okay, so then our payroll customers, this is always a little delicate on when do we actually put the update on. And so typically you can put it on anytime. Now, you don't have to wait until all of your payrolls are finished for this year. You could put the update on any day that you like. You do want to get it on there before you do 2017 payrolls because we want to get the wage file created, and that's part of the update. If you're one of those Canadian payroll processors, they're a little more stringent on the window of time that you have to put that update on, and that literally has to be after 2016 payrolls have all been processed, but before anything for the new year is processed in payroll. And so if you're a weekly payer in Canada, you have a very short time there to actually get all of this done. For the U.S. customers or users, it's a little easier because we can do that anytime. As soon as the software is released, and we make sure that we check for customization, and if we have any third-party or companion products that we don't have any problems with those. Sometimes one of the ISV products will put a notice out and say, hey, don't put the year-end update on. We need to tweak something in ours. We need to provide a service pack for our system. And so then sometimes we wait for them a little bit. But for the most part, as a general rule, the companion products are typically not affected significantly by the year-end update. But that's kind of just a general statement, and of course if we have customization, then we want to run that back through us and make sure that we're comfortable with you moving ahead or us moving ahead for you on your behalf and getting that year-end update done. And so something to get on the calendar anytime now, and if you're on 2016 already, then December 1st, which is this time next week or next Thursday, I guess. So anytime after that, we could get you on the calendar if you're looking for our help to have part of this done. So, and then the last paragraph here again kind of points back to the test that it's not a bad idea after you put the update on to just restore your test company with a copy of your live company and just run through a payroll check process and maybe a payables check process in this kind of test company just to make sure that everything comes out okay and the check isn't suddenly printing sideways now instead of up and down. I've never seen that happen, but just as a little extra precaution, and that's good if you have very large payrolls where you don't have a lot of time to get payroll out, and so you want to make sure that when you do a live payroll that you're not going to have an alignment problem with the check or something go wrong, and so it's always kind of a nice thing to do. One thing that there tends to be some confusion on too around this year-end time is the difference between the year-end update and the actual payroll tax table update. And so they are two separate things, and of course the year-end update really is just another service pack. And as I mentioned before, it has program changes to it, and so those form layout changes that Microsoft has done. Sometimes they add features to the year-end update, just like they add features to a service pack. As features for another version get finished and they work with our version, they will put those into the backward compatible service packs, and so customers can get sometimes new features without actually upgrading to the new version that's about to be released type thing. And so, that's all part of that service pack, that year-end service pack. We call it a year-end update, but it really is a service pack. And there's lots of other things they could touch. We typically think of the year-end update having to do with payroll and the HR module, and that's that's always the case because that's where those form changes and so forth are delivered, but they could touch other modules as well. And so that's a little different in the actual tax table update. And a tax table update is really Microsoft just delivering to us as a user the changes that belong in the actual payroll tax tables. And those could be the federal withholding tables, could be Social Security tables, and it could be a state tax table. So if we have state of Minnesota withholding change, that would come from Microsoft and updates our Minnesota tax table. And again, those are centered around payroll only. And you've probably seen these in the past where they will come out with a round 1, a round 2, and depending on how many states make changes and where the IRS is, sometimes you can have round 5, 6, 7 all within the first couple of months of the new year. And so it's important to keep those separate in your thinking and your process, because the year-end update is the piece we want to do now and we can get going on today. The payroll tax tables, there's a round 1 tax update that is coming very soon and probably it could come out around December 1st or maybe that next week from the 1st, so maybe 2 weeks from now. We will have the 2017 round 1 tax update, and that will have all the states that Microsoft has heard from. It'll have their changes for 2017 withholding for state income tax. It will have the IRS withholding calculations for 2017, and could have Social Security changes. And so what we don't want to do is put that tax update on now, because if that was out and we put that on, then that resets our Social Security wage limit immediately, and we don't really want the new Social Security wage limit in place until we do 2017 payroll. And so, and we don't really want to change the state withholdings and the IRS withholding tables for 2017. We don't want to do those right now because we're still running payroll in 2016. And so it's important to not put that on until we've actually finished our 2016 payroll, we've created the year-end wage file, so we've got the data pulled out, and we're ready to do 2017 payroll for the first time. Then we can slide that tax update in there, and that's fairly automated, and a lot of customers do that themselves without our help, because that's very easy to do right off the menu. And so, and there could actually be some new program code that does get kind of slid into the tax updates, and sometimes there's a state that might require a rework of how they do withholding, or there could be an IRS law change on how we calculate withholding taxes, and so that would be also in that first round of hopefully in that first round of tax table updates. And we certainly don't want those laws going into our system today as we're still running 2016 payroll. And so that one is more critical probably than anything, is we don't want to get the 2017 tables into our system until we're ready to do 2017 payroll. Now, some people forget to do this, and they do a payroll or 2 or 3 or 4, and then they remember, oh, I forgot to put my 2017 tax tables in the system, and sometimes we'll call in a mild panic on, what do I do? Well, nothing. You just withheld at 2016 rates for a few payrolls, and unless you've had somebody immediately get up to that Social Security wage limit in the first couple of payrolls of the year, which is not very common, you really haven't heard anything. And so the system will catch you up. If you put the 2017 table updates in there, the system will catch you up the next time it does payroll. So nothing really to worry about if you're late on that by a payroll or so. You just don't want to do that part early. That's the stopper there. Okay, so Canadian payroll, folks. Again, the year-end update for Canadian payroll is expected out around the middle of next month, and that will, as I mentioned earlier, include the U.S. update, so you will have access to both. And if you're running both payrolls, then you still have plenty of time to get your system updated before it's time to pull a wage file out and start the W-2 process. But again, the one thing to remember here is if you do run Canadian payroll, you have a much tighter schedule and window to apply your update. So you have to have all of your 2016 payroll completed and not done any 2017 payroll yet. And in between the last payroll for this year and the first payroll for next is when that Canadian update has to go in. And so that you have a lot less flexibility than the U.S. folks with their year-end update. And so that's really just one thing to kind of make a note of, is if you are doing Canadian payroll, that has to be something that is kind of scheduled right around the January 1st, or if you do payroll and your last pay date is December 31st, then you've got probably a week to get that update on and get ready for the 2017 processing. But if you're doing payroll every 2 weeks or twice a month, then you've got a larger window, but we got to get that right in between the 2016 and 2017 processing dates. Okay, Charlene, anything to add, or up to this point we're getting into the payroll a little bit here, but anything that from what we've covered that that you can think of that we want to discuss a little more?
Yeah, I guess I would just add a couple little footnotes to some of the things that you said, and what you said was great. It's all very complete. Just, I don't want people to panic if they can't get their, for U.S., if you can't get your 2016 year-end payroll processes done before processing 2017 checks, that can be done later.
Mm-hmm.
You can even put the tax tables in for 2017 just before you run those check runs. Make sure that you have completed your 2016 check runs, but that the Social Security maximum would need to be edited back to the 2016 rate if you need to do the year-end wage file after that. So just a couple tidbits about that. And then I just also wanted to add that we have until the end of January to get W-2s and things done. January 31st is the deadline for filing the electronic file this year, like you mentioned, but based on what I heard down in GPUG Summit in Tampa, we want to encourage people to get those W-2s done and the electronic files submitted to the IRS early in January if you can this year, because we expect the IRS's website to be really bogged down on January 31st. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suspect that's going to be the case for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Charlene, and let's proceed here. So again, the round one for 2017 tax table update will be out there sometime between the 1st and middle of December is kind of what we're expecting. You see the states there that we know are going to be in it. There could be other states that that sneak in there before Microsoft actually gets this bundled up. But we know that there'll be California, Kentucky, Minnesota, Nebraska, North and South Carolina state changes that are ready to go, and so that will be in the first round. The big thing is the FICA Social Security limit is going up quite a bit. It's $118,500 today and has been that. I think for last year, and it's going up. They're playing catch up now. It's going up to $127,200, and so that's a pretty big jump. So that's what Charlene was mentioning, is if you did load this tax update prior, well, if you loaded it and still had a 2016 payroll, you just want to go in and set that FICA limit back, because you would over-collect if you had the 2017 tax table in there for Social Security. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that's going to be in the first round there is that Social Security upward adjustment. Most of you that do payroll in the system probably know that there's new overtime laws that go into effect on December 1st, and we've had a lot of questions on how are we going to be able to calculate that and deal with that. So Microsoft does have, as part of your GP license, you do have access to a little module called Overtime Rate Manager, and you might not see it in your system because it probably isn't installed, and so it is, I think, a separate install depending on the version, but anybody that's on enhancement, I think you just have to get it installed, and again, we can help you with that if you need help, but that is free, and you should all have access to it, and it does work with the GP salary pay codes to figure out that blended overtime rate that is part of the new law, and so this should be everything you need to be in compliance with the law changes if you were to use the ORM module, so to speak. So again, if you have questions or you need some help with that or getting it set up, we can kind of help you with that between now and December 1st if need be. But if you fall under these laws, you don't want to wait too long to deal with this because it is going to be law next week. So what's new in Affordable Care Act reporting? Of course, we know from the election some of this stuff could change, but who knows what and when. But for today, which is the existing law, there are changes to the 1095-C, and so it's another reason you will need the year-end update if you're doing 1095 tracking and printing out of your Dynamics GP HR and payroll system. Got the filing deadline to recipients has been extended, so we've got until March 2nd now to get the 1095-C out to the recipient, and in the Edit W-2 window in GP, we now have the ability to add a dependent kind of on the fly where we don't have to have the dependent set up in the HR system prior. And so if we're ready to print and we didn't get it set up just right, we do have the ability to do it kind of from the wage file, so to speak, and get that information in there. And remember, if you've done this in the past, Dynamics GP does not actually create the electronic file for the 1095 reporting. We have to look to Integrity Data or to Green Shades to actually do the electronic filing. And so Dynamics GP does the electronic filing of the W-2s, but not the 1095s. So that's something that if you're going to have an electronic filing requirement, that's something to keep in mind here pretty quick. There are some new codes for the 1095, the 1J and the 1K, and really both of them have to do with kind of the minimum essential coverage that is providing the minimum value around not so much the employee, but the dependents, and whether it's conditional to the spouse or conditional to the spouse and the dependents. And so if you have that situation, just be aware that there are some new codes that you'll be required to use. And if you're attending our year-end class, we'll go through that in more detail. This is just kind of to make you aware that this exists. We'll drill into this and spend more time on the actual process of how we do a lot of this stuff during our year-end closeout class, and so keep that in mind. And so then kind of the last section here really is dealing with 2016 R2, because this, as I said earlier, this actually will be in the year-end patch or service pack for GP 2016. And so when you get if you're on 2016 right now and you put the year-end update on for 2016, you will get R2 at the same time. And if you're looking for R2, you'll automatically get the year-end update, whether you want it or not. It'll all be bundled in there in the same file, and so which is a good thing. You'll only have to go through the process once. But a couple of things that are going to be in 2016 R2, and you'll notice there's not hundreds and hundreds of features here. There's really just about 25, but these are not really things that Microsoft came up with. These are things that all came from customers, and so 25 from customers that all had a very similar request, and these got prioritized to the top of the list. And so this is not everything, but some of the more popular ones, I think, are going to be adding Power BI on the web client homepage. And so we have Power BI that we can connect into the desktop client of GP, but if you're running the web client, Power BI will be able to be plugged into the homepage in the web client when we install the R2 update for 2016. And of course that will replace the SQL Reporting Services reports, the Business Analyzer plug into the home page. That will actually go away if you put the Power BI piece in there, and so which is okay because you'll still have access to a lot of that same data, but it'll be kind of a one or the other from what I've seen. We'll be able to cancel a purchase order even when it's linked to a requisition. So if we do a purchase requisition and that turns into a purchase order and we don't get a complete shipment, or for whatever reason we decide to cancel the PO or cancel line items that are linked to a requisition, that will be allowed. Today it's not. It'll go back to the requisition and actually put a little visual cue, a little icon on the line items of the requisition that were on that PO that got canceled. So if a requisition user logs in and looks to see what's going on, they'll be able to see on their requisition that those line items are canceled and they're not coming. So that's pretty highly requested, I think. On sales order processing, we'll be able to now display the sales tax percent when we look at historical transactions. And so what happens today in the system is if there's a tax, let's say the county updates their sales tax and we go in and make that change, well, when we look at a transaction that was done a week ago, 10 years ago, we see the correct dollars, but the percent of the sales tax on the document is the percent that is used today. It's whatever's in kind of that master setup table today, and we don't know what the actual sales tax percent was on that historical invoice because it's overwritten. It goes today and it just pulls the current percentage out. Even though the dollars are correct on the document, the percent would be incorrect if there was an update. And so they figured out a way to kind of separate those two, and the historical percentage is going to stay what it was even if the percent today is different. And if you don't do a lot of invoices, that won't matter. If you do a lot of sales order processing invoices, then that will be one of your favorites probably. Smart List Designer, Smart Lists, so those smart lists that are built with the internal designer program will be available in advanced lookups, and so currently they're not available in advanced lookups, and so that will be a nice feature to have. And then of course today, if we make a smart list favorite, it could potentially get overwritten, so someone could change it and make it their favorite, save their changes, and then our favorite is no longer our favorite. So they've got a way to password protect that now so that it can be locked where no one can actually change smart list favorites. Probably the biggest one is right now if there's a message that a batch is being edited by another user, so you go in to do something, it'll say batch is being edited by another user. Well, if you've got 3 users and they're all sitting in the same space, that's pretty easy to figure out who the other user is. If you've got 100 users and they're spread around the country, that's not so easy to tell, okay, who's editing the batch? Well, so now they're actually going to put the name of the user into that message. So it'll say batch is being edited by user Kim, and so we'll know who to track down and tell Kim to get out of that batch. When we use SafePay in 2016 R2, the SafePay file will actually pull the check name from the check and not the vendor. So there is a check name on the vendor card, and that's typically what we would use to print our check. But sometimes when we actually print the check or enter the voucher, sometimes we have something different there. And so SafePay was going back to the vendor card. Well, now it'll look to the actual check, and if that check name is different from the vendor card, then we would have the correct check name actually in the SafePay file and not what was set up on the vendor master. When we go into general ledger distributions, right now, and this is mostly in sales order and in the purchasing, so accounts payable voucher entry, when you go to the distributions button, the window is compressed. You can go over to the right and click the little expansion icon there to expand it, where you can see, instead of just the account number, you can see the account name and then any distribution references that you might want to type in. So as an option, so this is by user, each user will be able to decide when you go into that GL distribution button, you can have that distributions window expanded when you open it, and so that way you don't have to keep going over to the little expansion icon and opening it up. It'll do that for you automatically if you so desire. And they've got a way now to clean out some of the old bank reconciliation and transaction history, just for better performance around bank rec. If we don't care what our bank reconciliation looked like, 10 years ago, so there's no reason to really save that in the system to, keep dragging us down maybe every time we do a bank reconciliation. It has to go through and read all, oh yeah, that's reconciled, that's reconciled, that's reconciled, oh, this one isn't, so put that one up. There's a way to be able to kind of remove that history now. And another one that I think is absolutely phenomenal is we now in 2016 R2 will have the ability to print a W-2 with lines on blank paper, so much like we can the 1095, where it actually images the form on a piece of white paper. So our W-2, not necessarily our copy A, so our pink and white one, so to speak, if we're doing paper forms, not that one, but the other copies that really are just plain paper copies will actually have a nice way to produce that W-2 right out of the system. So that's long overdue. In HR, we've got a way to track the history on termination and rehire dates. That's a big request, is with people that come and go sometimes through a company where they're in and out several times a year or every couple of years. It's nice to be able to see the termination and rehire dates in a historical form instead of just the most recent rehire date or termination date, and so that's going to be nice for folks that use HR that do have people kind of churning through the organization. The deductions and arrears, got a way to prevent a double posting of the mandatory arrears, so that's always good. The payroll integration to payables, made some enhancements there, so going to be some nice things added. Payroll pre-posting journals, so kind of what you think of as an edit list maybe, will include the tips on the distributions, and so that's always good to have. And then a couple of enhancements in project accounting that are always good, where the distributions will have distributions for each transaction instead of just kind of lump sum. And so those are always helpful as we try to build a stronger and stronger audit trail and the ability to trace back into how things came to be. So the last couple of slides here are links to some very important information around year-end. So there's lots of stuff out on Customer Source. There's blogs out there. Most of those are run by Microsoft, and so they're reliable, accurate information. got a link here to Dynamics support if for some reason you needed to open a support incident there. The Dynamics community link is there, which is a wealth of information. You could make a career out of reading all of the information that's out there now. So, and then of course the 2016 closeout blog is separate from most of the other blogs, and it deals specifically with the 2016 year end and all the different modules affected and closings and so forth. And then the last thing is here the GP directory, which is a good kind of one-stop shop to find a wealth of information to branch you out into a lot of different areas on what's going on with Dynamics GP. And so all of these are extremely helpful, highly recommended. When it comes to payroll, there's specific things out there on W-2 preparation. We've got, I think the top several of these are documents that InterDyn BMI has done. There's a year-end guide that is just filled with helpful hints and tips and tricks and walks you through step by step on closing out the payroll for the year. We've got a nice Excel reconciliation spreadsheet on making sure your wages tie out. So some people just send W-2s in and they don't really realize that those kind of have to match the 941s and so forth for the year, and there's some ways to make sure that you don't get a nice little love letter in the mail from IRS or Social Security Administration, and because they will reconcile your numbers if you don't, and so, well, they'll do it anyway, and if you haven't done it and know that they're right, then they're going to make you do it. But sometimes when they find out, it's a year or two later and you have other things in your mind, and that stuff is sometimes filed away, and it's much harder to go back after you're halfway or full into another year. It's harder to go back and kind of remember sometimes what happened a year or two ago. And so lots and lots of very good stuff out here that we can make available here. And so Kim, I think that's the end of what we wanted to present. Any closing comments or questions or anything from you that we need to address?
Yeah, so let's ask Charlene as well if there's any other tips before I go into
Yes.
the question area. Charlene?
I think, Brian, you did a great job covering all of that. And yes, you're right. Those documents at the end there are full of really good information too. So I would encourage any payroll customer to be sure to take a look at those.
And also because there's some hyperlinks and great information here, I have a copy of Brian's deck. And so if you would like to get that, just simply email userexperiences@InterDyn BMI, and I'll make sure you get a copy of today's deck. Okay? All right. Well, we do have some questions. And this one, someone came back and said, oh, you just answered it. But I still thought it's not a bad idea because there are some folks out there on older versions of GP. The question is, we are on 2010 and working with InterDyn to upgrade in next April. We use green shades for 1099s. Are you saying we will have issues without the 2016 1099s?
No, if you're using green shades to file 1099s, then you should be okay. They have been pretty good about picking up the older GP versions and making sure that they still work in their system, and actually that's one benefit that they kind of sell, so to speak, is if you're on an unsupported version and you won't get the year-end update, that they can still get those things filed for you. So that's been the case in the past. Charlene, have you heard anything different? I have not.
No, I believe that is true, that if they're using green shades for 1099s, for sure they'd be okay, and possibly for W-2s. There isn't any guarantee, of course, if we don't know what kind of tax changes are going to come out that might require programming changes. But if it's possible just to manually update tax tables in that old version, you could possibly run W-2s even, but no guarantee on that, so it's a little bit risky to stay on an older version.
Sounds good. Yep, it's always a better investment when you stay current, and everyone knows that. Just need to plan, and we'll be looking forward to helping you after the first of the year. All right. Well, other than that, I don't have any other questions. So again, if you've got specifics, please get in touch with user experiences at InterDyn BMI. That email will come to me. Also, Charlene and other valuable consultants are now starting to record who wants help with some year ends. So make sure that you reach out to the person that works with you closely here at InterDyn so we can make sure that we get you in the schedule and take care of your needs. Brian and Charlene, thank you as always. A lot of valuable information, and we'll have a copy of today's presentation put out on our YouTube channel so that you can go back, share it with other people in your organization that needs to hear this valuable information. So thank you.